$217 million worldwide in one weekend. That is what the Michael Jackson biopic Mike Heel pulled in during its opening days. And as the money pours in, the Jackson estate stands to collect tens of millions of dollars in direct profit participation, upfront payments, music licensing fees, and a massive wave of renewed streaming revenue that could dwarf the box office check itself. The numbers here are staggering. The deals are layered, and the family dynamics behind who actually sees that money are far more complicated than you might expect. So let's break down exactly where every dollar is going. On April 24, 2026, Antoine Fuqua's Mike Heel opened in theaters across the world. The biopic debuted with a record-breaking $97 million domestic opening and a global launch of $217.4 million. To put that in perspective, these ticket sales rank as the best start of all time for a biopic, smashing the record set by 2015's Straight Outta Compton at $60 million. The previous standard-bearer for music biopics, Bohemian Rhapsody, opened to $51 million back in 2018. Mike Heel nearly doubled that in the United States alone. The film stars Jafar Jackson, Michael Jackson's real-life nephew, in his acting debut, with Colman Domingo and Nia Long playing Joe and Catherine Jackson. It was directed by Antoine Fuqua, written by John Logan, and produced by Graham King, the same man behind Bohemian Rhapsody. The film hails from producer Graham King, whose previous blockbuster, Bohemian Rhapsody, is its closest comp. That connection matters because it tells you exactly what the financial playbook was from the start. The film carries a price tag near $200 million, making it one of the most expensive biopics of all time. That budget didn't start there. With an initial $150 million budget, Mike Heel was already the most ambitious biopic of all time. When it wrapped initial production in May 2024, the budget ballooned because of an unexpected legal complication that forced the entire third act of the film to be scrapped and reshot. We'll get into what happened there later, but what you need to know now is this. The Jackson estate helped pay for those reshoots, which means they are not just the family name on the poster, they are co-investors in this project. Those costs were split by Lionsgate Universal, which is distributing the film internationally, and the Michael Jackson estate. That three-way cost-sharing arrangement is key to understanding the financial picture. Lionsgate handles domestic distribution, Universal handles international market, and the Jackson estate put up its own money, including for the reshoots, in exchange for a direct cut of the profits. Now, how high can this thing go? $217 million worldwide in one weekend. That is what the Michael Jackson biopic Mike Heel pulled in during its opening days. And as the money pours in, the Jackson estate stands to collect tens of millions of dollars in direct profit participation, upfront payments, music licensing fees, and a massive wave of renewed streaming revenue that could dwarf the box office check itself. The numbers here are staggering. The deals are layered, and the family dynamics behind who actually sees that money are far more complicated than you might expect. So let's break down exactly where every dollar is going. On April 24, 2026, Antoine Fuqua's Mike Heel opened in theaters across the world. The biopic debuted with a record-breaking $97 million domestic opening and a global launch of $217.4 million. To put that in perspective, these ticket sales rank as the best start of all time for a biopic, smashing the record set by 2015's Straight Outta Compton at $60 million. The previous standard-bearer for music biopics, Bohemian Rhapsody, opened to $51 million back in 2018 plus. Mike Heel nearly doubled that in the United States alone. The film stars Jafar Jackson, Michael Jackson's real-life nephew, in his acting debut, with Colman Domingo and Nia Long playing Joe and Catherine Jackson. It was directed by Antoine Fuqua, written by John Logan, and produced by Graham King, the same man behind Bohemian Rhapsody. That connection matters because it tells you exactly what the financial playbook was from the start. The film carries a price tag near $200 million, making it one of the most expensive biopics of all time. That budget didn't start there. With an initial $150 million budget, Mike Heel was already the most ambitious biopic of all time. When it wrapped initial production in May 2024, the budget ballooned because of an unexpected legal complication that forced the entire third act of the film to be scrapped and reshot. We'll get into what happened there later, but what you need to know now is this. The Jackson estate helped pay for those reshoots, which means they are not just the family name on the poster, they are co-investors in this project. Those costs were split by Lionsgate Universal, which is distributing the film internationally, and the Michael Jackson estate. That three-way cost-sharing arrangement is key to understanding the financial picture. Lionsgate handles domestic distribution, Universal handles international markets, and the Jackson estate put up its own money, including for the reshoots, in exchange for a direct cut of the profits. Now, how high can this thing go? If ticket sales surpass $700 million worldwide, as expected, Michael will land among Lionsgate's biggest films of all time. That $700 million figure isn't just a target for bragging rights. It's the number that would unlock a sequel, and more importantly, audiences embraced Michael with an A grade on CinemaScore exit polls, a mark that bodes well for box office longevity. For context, Bohemian Rhapsody had a similar audience score and went on to gross over $900 million worldwide. The film currently sits at 38% on Rotten Tomatoes with critics, but the audience score sits at 97%. Critics and audiences are living in two different realities on this one, and the box office is siding with the audience. IMAX alone accounted for $13.8 million, or roughly 14% of North American ticket sales, and $24.5 million globally, ranking as the company's biggest start for a musical biopic. Cinemas turned screenings into events through Michael-themed dance moments and in-theater activations. People weren't just going to watch this movie, they were going to experience it. But all of these numbers only tell half the story. The real question isn't how much money the film is making, it's how much of that money flows back to the Jackson family. To understand who in the Jackson family profits from Michael, you first have to understand the structure of the Michael Jackson estate and how it operates as a business entity. This isn't a situation where the Jackson siblings or the Jackson children simply get a check from the studio and co-production deals before it reaches any family member's bank account. For music licensing and co-production, that $10 million was a guaranteed payment. It hits the estate's books regardless of whether the film makes $1 or $1 billion at the box office. It covers the rights to use Michael Jackson's music in the film, and it compensates the estate for its role as co-producer alongside Graham King and Lionsgate. In the best-case scenario, the estate's 25% profit participation could yield an additional $40 million. Profit participation is the Hollywood term for a cut of the net profits. At 25%, the estate is positioned to earn a massive check if the film crosses into blockbuster territory. Now, profit in Hollywood is a notoriously slippery term. Studios have been known to use creative accounting to minimize net profits for decades. But the Jackson estate's position is stronger than most because they are a co-investor, not just a licensor. As a co-investor in the movie, the Jackson estate could be on the hook for millions if it doesn't break even. But as an equity partner is also in position to earn more if Michael turns into a Bohemian-sized blockbuster. The film needs to hit a high threshold just to break even. Michael needs to gross more than $500 million globally to be profitable, a mark only ever reached by one other movie in the genre, Bohemian Rhapsody. That $500 million figure accounts for the production budget, the reshoot costs, the worldwide marketing campaign, and the distribution fees taken by both Lionsgate and Universal. Anything above $500 million is where the real money starts flowing. Lionsgate is reportedly hoping for more than $700 million, including downstream revenue from streaming, in order to greenlight a sequel. That $700 million figure includes not just theatrical box office, but home video streaming licensing, airline screenings. If that target is hit, the estate's 25% participation kicks into its highest earning bracket. But, and this is critical, the estate's earnings from Michael don't go directly into the pockets of the Jackson family. They go into the Michael Jackson Family Trust, which is a legal entity with its own rigid distribution rules. According to Jackson's will, His assets and posthumous earnings are allocated to a trust, with 40% to his mother, Katherine Jackson, 40% to his 3 children, and the remaining 20% to unspecified charities. Those 3 children are Prince, Paris, and B.G. Jackson. Notice who is absent from that list: every single one of Michael's siblings. Joe Jackson, who passed away in 2018, was not named in the will. Janet Jackson is not named. Jermaine, Tito, Jackie, Marlon, LaToya, Rebby, Randy. None of them are beneficiaries of the trust. The only family members who stand to receive money from the estate's earnings on Michael are Katherine and Michael's 3 children. Katherine is a life beneficiary who has received over $55 million since the singer's 2009 passing. She is now 95 years old. Her share of the trust is designed to support her for the rest of her life, and any remaining funds in that sub-trust pass to Michael's children upon her death. So when we ask how much the Jackson family will make from Michael, the honest answer is, it depends on which Jackson family members you're talking about. The estate will make tens of millions. Katherine and the 3 children will eventually see portions of that money. The siblings will see none of it directly, unless they have separate individual deals connected to the film. Before the estate can collect a single dollar of profit, the film has to recoup its massive budget. And the story of how Michael became one of the most expensive biopics in history is itself a saga of legal blunders, scrapped footage, and ballooning costs that ultimately came out of the estate's pocket. Principal photography took place between January 22 and May 30, 2024. The initial budget was $150 million, already an astronomical figure for a biographical film. It was projected to spend $120 million on crew wages and vendors. That $150 million covered the extravagant concert recreations, the period-accurate sets, the expensive music licensing rights, and the cost of launching an unknown lead actor, Jafar Jackson, in a tentpole production. The original script, written by John Logan, spanned Michael Jackson's entire career. Earlier versions of the script involved the child sexual abuse accusations against Jackson. The film was designed to confront the most controversial chapters of Jackson's life head-on. Initially, the screenplay had dramatized a 1993 child molestation lawsuit against Jackson. Director Antoine Fuqua shot scenes of the 1993 police raid on Neverland Ranch. He filmed sequences showing Jackson being investigated, stripped of his dignity, treated as a suspect. The film was supposed to be a warts-and-all portrayal. Then the lawyers discovered something that should have been caught months earlier. The settlement between the Chandler family and Michael reportedly included an agreement that the Chandlers can never be mentioned or dramatized in a movie. This was a clause in the original 1994 settlement. Bloomberg reported that attorneys for Michael's estate did not realize that the settlement clause would impact the content of the movie until after the scenes had been filmed. The implications were catastrophic for the production. The entire third act of the film was now unusable. Millions of dollars worth of footage had to be thrown out. The film underwent 22 days of reshoots to reshape the third act. Due to a legal settlement the estate had overlooked. Reshoots took place in June 2025, lasting 22 days. How much did those reshoots cost? The numbers vary depending on who you ask, with the new sequences adding a new ending, costing roughly $50 million. However, Variety reported that the reshoots only added $10–15 million to the budget, funded by the Jackson estate. On top of the production overhaul, the director and producer negotiated substantial pay raises. According to a Bloomberg report, Fuqua and King were initially set to earn $10 million and $6 million, respectively, while Fuqua secured an extra $15 million to complete the reshoots. That's $25 million in additional payments to 2 people, paid because the estate's own lawyers missed a clause in a settlement that was 3 decades old. Every dollar spent on reshoots, every dollar paid to Fuqua and King in bonuses, every dollar spent re-editing and rescoring the new version of the film, all of that adds to the total cost. The movie must recoup before the estate sees profit participation. The estate was paying to fix its own mistake, and those costs directly reduced the amount of money that will eventually flow to Katherine Jackson and the three children. Instead of a 3.5-hour epic, Lionsgate and the filmmakers decided to end the movie in the late 1980s. At the height of Jackson's career, the film now ends in 1988 during the Bad Tour. Over 20 years of Michael Jackson's life, including Dangerous Hey Story, the 2005 trial, and his death in 2009, are left untold. And that creative pivot has a financial consequence too. It opens the door for a sequel. The box office take is the most visible revenue stream, but it may not be the most important one for the Jackson family's bottom line. Music biopics have a documented history of supercharging streaming numbers and catalog sales for the featured artist, and the effect can last for years. The Jackson estate negotiated its deals with this in mind. The estate negotiated for a larger share of international royalties on the remaining half of the Jackson music it owns during its catalog sale in 2024, which could see the biggest bump from Mike Hill. That 2024 deal, in which half of Jackson's own music rights were sold to Sony for $600 million, was structured so that the estate retained a significant stake in how Jackson's music performs going forward. The biopic was always part of that calculation. Consider what happened with Queen after Bohemian Rhapsody. According to UK public filings, Queen's holding company saw revenue increase from roughly $24 million in 2017, before the movie's release, to $94 million in 2019, and it paid dividends to band members of more than $85 million across the next 4 years. That is a four-fold increase in annual revenue, sustained for years after the film's theatrical run ended. If Mike Hill triggers even half that effect for Michael Jackson's catalog, the estate is looking at tens of millions in additional annual streaming income. The Jackson estate already earns substantial annual revenue from these channels, estimated at $105 million in 2025 alone. That $105 million comes from streaming royalties, merchandise, Cirque du Soleil productions, MJ the Musical on Broadway, and various licensing deals. Since Jackson's death, Forbes estimates the estate has earned more than $3.5 billion, achieving the #1 spot on their annual list of highest-paid dead celebrities in 13 of the last 16 years. The biopic is designed to accelerate that machine even further. The marketing campaign for Mike Hill was itself a catalog promotion vehicle. The teaser trailer was viewed 116.2 million times in 24 hours, more than the first 24 hours of any other Lionsgate film, and more than any trailer for a musical biopic or concert film in history. Every one of those views funneled potential listeners back to Spotify, Apple Music, and YouTube, where Jackson's music generates per-stream revenue for the estate. The overall Michael Social campaign generated 564 million-plus views to date across platforms. There were Don't Walk, Moonwalk flash mob dance activations, which transformed city intersections in 20 different markets globally. There was a Spotify collaboration that placed fans into different Jackson eras based on streaming data. Every one of these activations was a revenue event for the estate's music catalog. The film's success is expected to revitalize interest in Jackson's music catalog and lead to further revenue streams, including stage productions and merchandise. MJ the Musical is still running on Broadway and touring internationally. Cirque du Soleil's Michael Jackson 1 show runs nightly in Las Vegas. The biopic creates a halo effect that lifts every single Jackson-related commercial property. For the Jackson family, specifically Katherine and the three children, this is where the long-term money lives. Box office grosses are a one-time event. Streaming surges and catalog revivals generate income for years, sometimes decades. The estate's strategy mirrors the success of the 2018 Freddie Mercury biopic Bohemian Rhapsody, which saw Queen's annual revenue jump from $24 million to $94 million within 2 years. If the Jackson estate sees a comparable lift, we're talking about an additional $50 million to $80 million per year in catalog income, money that flows directly through the trust to its beneficiaries. The biopic also opens the door for a sequel which would trigger another round of production fees, music licensing payments, and profit participation for the estate. Lionsgate is expected to greenlight at least one more film about Jackson's life. It's been reported that 30% of the first film's footage is already edited and available for Part 2. That means the sequel would cost less to produce, break even faster, and start generating profits sooner. Profits in which the estate would again participate. Here's where it gets complicated. The Michael Jackson estate is not the Jackson family. The estate is controlled by two executors, John Branca and John McClain, who were named in Michael's 2002 will, signed July 7, 2002. The will names Branca and accountant John McClain as executors. These two men have run the estate for nearly 17 years, turning it from a $450 million deficit at the time of the singer's 2009 death into a $3.5 billion global empire. Michael leaves nothing to his siblings, his father Joe Jackson, or anyone else. That means Jermaine Jackson, whose son Jafar is the star of the film, does not receive estate money from the biopic. LaToya Jackson, who appeared at the premiere, does not receive estate money. Janet Jackson, who declined to be included in the film, does not receive estate money. Jafar Jackson himself presumably has an acting deal with Lionsgate for his performance. The wider Jackson family's connection to the financial bonanza of Michael is peripheral at best. Even for the named beneficiaries, the money isn't flowing freely. The beneficiaries of Michael Jackson's trust have not received any money. Amid a dispute between the IRS and the late singer's estate, the trust cannot be formally funded until the estate resolves a massive tax dispute with the IRS. A conflict that has been dragging on for years. A major roadblock to the funding of his heir's trust is the tax dispute, involving more than $700 million in alleged unpaid taxes and penalties. In the meantime, Catherine and the children receive periodic allowances from the estate. Catherine is a life beneficiary who has received over $55 million. Since the singer's 2009 passing, the children also receive support. But the full trust payouts, the real generational wealth, remain locked behind legal proceedings. Not everyone in the family is celebrating the film either. Paris Jackson had no involvement in the film and described an early script as sugar-coated. She has been vocal in her criticism. Paris called Hollywood biopics sold to you as real but sugar-coated and expressed frustration that her notes on the first draft were ignored. She also accused Branca of considering himself central to the Michael Jackson story and trying to enrich and aggrandize himself through costly casting decisions. Prince Jackson, on the other hand, served as an executive producer on the film and was on set every day during filming and was deeply involved in the project's development. Michael's sons, Prince and Biggie Jackson, attended the premieres, while Janet and Paris have kept their distance from the project. So here's the final accounting. The Jackson estate stands to earn an estimated $10 million upfront from music licensing and co-production. A 25% profit participation could bring an additional $40 million or more. If the film crosses $700 million worldwide, the indirect effect on streaming and catalog sales could generate an additional $50 to $80 million per year for several years, if the Bohemian Rhapsody model holds. And a sequel, which appears likely, would trigger an entirely new round of payments. But that money goes to the estate, which is controlled by Branca and McClain, and distributed through a trust that benefits only Catherine and the three children. The rest of the Jackson family, the siblings, the cousins, the extended network, sees none of it directly. The film that tells the story of the Jackson family's rise from Gary, Indiana, to global superstardom is, financially speaking, a windfall for an estate controlled by two men who are not Jacksons, flowing through a trust that excludes most Jacksons, while the wider Jackson family watches from the outside. Michael may be the biggest biopic in history, but the question of who makes money from it is a story that Michael Jackson himself wrote into his will 24 years ago, and the answer left most of his own family out of the picture.